Last time on the Skip and Josh podcast.
So who do you think the Canadians, who do you prefer to face as a Habs fan, Islanders or Tampa?
I really have no preference whatsoever. First of all, Tampa could be the best team in the league. They won the Stanley Cup last year, and they got, assuming Kucherov is playing, they have all their weapons. And the Islanders, they're like almost a carbon copy of Montreal. So like Montreal can't dominate that type of game because the Islanders are going to do the same thing.
You're listening to the Skip and Josh podcast with Skip Sherman and Josh Obadia.
Okay, Skip, so it's the 4th of July, actually. Not a holiday in Canada, but a holiday in the United States. And it is also the day before Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Finals. Just to get everyone up to date, Montreal is down 3-0 in the series. We have not recorded at all since the finals began. So there's a lot to talk about, but maybe there isn't really that much to talk about, actually. So,
well, we're going to try to do like what we've been doing, like a nice, maybe 15-minute-ish episode. Let's talk about everything that happened in the first 3 games. And then we can, you can tune in, Josh, on TSN, and you can watch the hot dog eating contest. So you can see if Joey Chestnut can keep his crown.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that was today.
It's literally the most disgusting thing on earth. I can't even watch that for 1 second.
So here's some things that I wrote down that have nothing to do with the hockey game itself.
Okay.
So you know how we sometimes do what's bugging me?
Yeah. So
I'm going to do what's bugging you because I know that this is bugging you, even though you haven't mentioned it.
This is new. I love it. This is great.
So all the games are advertised to start at 8 o'clock, but they've all started like at 8:25.
I hate it so much. I hate it so much. They start at 8:15. Really, they started at 8:15.
Oh no! The first one and the third one where they had player intros, they started at 8:25. I looked at my phone to check the time.
So bad. Honestly, there's only one thing worse than that.
What's worse than that?
See, at least they're saying tune in at 8 o'clock. Tune in at 8 o'clock. That's going to be the start of the game, and then okay, we have to wait. But it would be worse if they advertised, if they actually advertised Stanley Cup Finals, Game 1, 7 o'clock, and then they try to deceive you to watch their 1 hour, pregame show. That's the worst. And TSN's doing that, by the way, for the Euro games, by the way.
I'm sure they are. Yeah. That's
yeah.
At least when you look at the guide on CBC, and I think on Sportsnet also, it shows that the game starts at 8 and the pregame show starts at 7:30. At least they have it separate as 2 separate things in the guide.
Yeah, I just wish that they would drop the puck a little bit sooner, so.
Speaking of the player introductions, I don't know if you recall the player introductions from Game 1.
Yeah, they booed all the Canadians players, and then, of course, we booed all their players.
Well, that's fine. But what struck me as so odd during the player intros, when they were doing the Canadians players, first of all, it seemed like it was random. Like, normally, you do the goalie first or the goalie last or something. Goalie, defenseman, forwards, or forwards, whatever. There was no order to it whatsoever. It wasn't by jersey number. It wasn't alphabetical. It wasn't by position. It made no sense to me. And I don't know if you noticed when they got to, I think it was Lehkonen happened to be on the starting lineup for that game. They didn't even show him. They said his name, but they didn't even show him on TV. And Brendan Gallagher happened to be the first guy that they showed. And he really just looked like he didn't want to be there. It was the weirdest introduction of players I've ever seen before.
It was weird, actually. They wooed them so fiercely, and the players just sort of stood there very stoically. So I have to give the players credit for trying to block out literally the noise. But maybe that's the only good thing the Canadians have done in those 3 games was trying to stay stoic during the introductions.
Another thing I'll add is, you know how we've been talking that, Montreal really hasn't changed their lineup much unless there was an injury and they didn't have a choice. And when they were winning 7 games in a row, I get it. But they've now lost 3 games in a row. So if there's ever a time that you were going to juggle the lineup, now would be the time.
There was a lot of, I'll use a fancy word, there was some scuttlebutt before Game 3 saying that Tatar was going to come back in. But the problem is I don't know who they're going to take out. And then, of course, we saw Evans in game 1, but that was just because Armia was not ready to play. It still baffles me that Merrill and Gustafsson are playing. Like, honestly, like I still can't figure out what Gustafsson brings to the team. I still can't figure it out. I don't know what the coaches see. I don't see it.
And I can't figure out what did Romanov and Kulak do to deserve being healthy scratches.
Absolutely. Kulak played the whole year. I mean, Romanov, we've talked about Romanov. We know he played the whole year. Kulak too, you know? I don't know. I guess, look, they did this little formula that they did at the end of the Toronto series and the end of the Vegas series, where basically they only played 4 defensemen. And, you know, Gustafsson got his minutes on the power play. Merrill got his minutes on the penalty kill. And they had very few shifts in there. Last game, because the Canadians were losing quite badly, or the game seemed out of reach at several points, they used Gustafsson and Merrill more. and then the whole world could see how bad they were, because they really were bad, you know? So if you're only going to use Gustafsson on the power play because you're scared to use him, then you have a problem. Like, that's not going to work. You know, it's just not. You know, because it's not like remember the Canadians had, was his name Marc-Andre Bergeron? Or am I is that the right player's name?
I think so.
They had a guy who was like a defenseman who was like a power play specialist, you know? And at one point they had guys like Mark Streit, you know, like...
And Yannick Weber.
Yeah, Yannick Weber, you know, like... Gustafsson's not even these guys, you know? Like, he's not even... He doesn't have a big shot. He fumbles the puck a lot. He's unsure of himself. It's tough to watch. It's really tough to watch. Well, the whole first 3 games have been tough to watch, especially game 2. You know, honestly, like after they lost game 1, I really had a lot of hope for game 2. Thinking, okay, game 1, they were nervous. They got caught up in all the hype. They were nervous. Like I chalked it up to like they didn't play well because they were nervous. They didn't play their game. And then actually I was right, and most people who thought the same as me were right, because they came out and played great in game 2. You know? For 55 minutes out of 60 minutes they played great. But you know, one bonehead play at the end of the second period, one bonehead play in the third period, and game over. You know? Like that was it. You know, and it's too bad that you find yourself down 3-0 now, really, because Tampa's capitalized on every mistake you've made, you know?
Yeah, you have to play a perfect game to beat Tampa, and none of the games have been perfect by Montreal standards. After game 1, I said to a friend of mine, that was ugly. And I didn't think it was possible. But game 3 was uglier. I didn't think it could have been uglier than game 1, but game 3 was uglier. And you know how sometimes you change the channel for power plays? You watch in French, although that doesn't help. Yeah. That doesn't help in this series because there's more French guys on Tampa than there are in Montreal. So what I did after it was 2-0 in game 3, I watched the rest of the game on NBC. And
how was that?
Well, I mean, it was fine to watch, but it didn't help the Canadians.
Who's the play-by-play there? Is it Emmerich?
No, he retired. It's Kenny Albert.
Oh, he's okay.
And your buddy Pierre Maguire.
Yeah, he's the worst. Honestly, he's the worst. Nah, look, it's really, I can't describe like the feeling in the city, because we had a couple of days off before game 1, and then the first games were in Tampa, and there was just so much excitement, so much positive energy, so much hype, you know, for the finals, you know, like for these final games, and then it's just all got sucked away, you know, like it's the fan base is just so down. I'm sure the players feel the same, you know, they're going to put up a brave face. They're going to say, we're going to just try to win game 4. And like, I hope they come out and play a great game in game 4, you know, let's send it back to Tampa. Let's keep it going. Let's at least win one game. But I mean, realistically, like we had a text exchange, you know, like you said before, you have to play perfect, right? So The thing is, even if they play perfect, the big obstacle at the other end is you've got this goalie, Vasilevsky, who's better than Price. Like he is the best goalie in the league. He's been nominated for the Vezina like each of the last 4 years. His stats are incredible. He's got a great defense in front of him too. That's part of it. And even if you play a great game, you might not be able to beat him. And look at the goals they scored on him too. Some of them are just weird, right? So it just goes to show, like, Price lets in some weird goals too because he can't see them. And I mean, look, we can talk about Carey Price. He hasn't played great the first 3 games, but I don't think he's the reason they lost. Like, you can't pin it on him. So yeah, it's just unfortunate. Like the Canadians that we're seeing in the Stanley Cup final, where a lot of new fans are looking at the Canadians, seeing the Canadians play for the first time, are wondering, what the hell? How did this team get to the final?
So, I mean, Tampa has shown that they're like in a class almost of their own, which actually, when I think about it now, it makes what the New York Islanders did even more remarkable. The New York Islanders took them to Game 7, and they lost Game 7 1-0, if I'm not mistaken.
1-0, yeah.
That series could have easily gone to the Islanders.
And not only that, they got blown out 8-0 one game.
I know, but they still took them to Game 7. So that means, to me, like if Tampa's in a class of their own, the Islanders are right there with them.
They're pretty close. They're pretty damn close. Or their defensive structure and style is just suffocating, enough to suffocate even the greatest offensive team. So I just wanted to finish my thought from before. Like, we're seeing the Canadians, the version of the Canadians we're seeing here in the final. It's not the same team that we saw against Vegas and against Toronto and against Winnipeg. It's not. They're not confident. This team, it's a very reminiscent of the team that we saw in big stretches of the regular season, where Carey Price is letting in some weak goals. The defense is constantly out of position. There's all kinds of weird chances against. They let up goals at the end of periods, right? Like that was the other recipe. That was the recipe for losses, And I mean, look, you want to look at bright spots of the finals? I can only think of one, and that's Nick Suzuki. That's, to me, he's the only bright spot so far. Maybe you could say Brendan Gallagher, just in the terms of the energy that he brings, but everybody else are passengers right now, if you ask me.
So Tampa has crushed the soul of Montreal, and they've done it by scoring early and often.
Yeah.
So I mean, you haven't even gotten comfortable on your couch yet, and it's already 2-0.
Right, and especially the Canadians and the fans watching, we're so used to Canadians like getting the lead. That's been their recipe for success: get the lead and hold it. And we haven't been able to do that, right? And not only have we not been able to do that, we haven't even been able to play long stretches of 0-0, right? Like, it's like the game, they score early and that's it. Then you're chasing the game, and then that's when you make mistakes. Can we talk about the Tampa power play for a second?
We can. Did you want me to tell you what I wrote down about their power play?
Yeah, please.
I said it should be used as an instructional video.
Oh, God. I mean, look, you have this perfect storm of a great system, which any team could play, but the perfect personnel, right? Because you have the right-handed shot one-timer on the left side. You have the left-handed shot one-timer on the right side. You have a defenseman who's playing the top of the circle, who's basically the distributor, and he's great at it, and he has a great shot also. Then you have this guy, Braden Point, who's scoring like everything, and then normally they have Alex Killorn in front of the net, but like he hasn't been around since game 1 because he hurt his ankle. But I mean, when the Canadians actually killed off quite a few of those power plays. Like, there's quite a bit of power plays that Tampa had where the Canadians managed to kill them off. And I was in shock. Like, I was in shock when they don't score on the power play. It's like, how is that even possible? When they whip the puck around, it should be, like you said, it should be an instructional video, because you have those one-timers and you have all the threats in all these danger positions, but it's the speed at which they move the puck that I haven't seen in I can't think of a unit that moves the puck as quick and as efficiently as they do. And then, of course, they have shooters all over the place to bury the chances.
Even the Edmonton Oilers of the 80s didn't have a power play like this. It was very potent, but it wasn't the same as this.
No, I mean, it's just nuts. I used to be scared of Stamkos's one-timer on that left side, and now you have Kucherov on the other side. Come on, it's obscene.
So I'm going to just shift gears a little bit here, and thank you for mentioning Victor Hedman, because he should have been called for 2 penalties in Game 3. I don't think it would have made a difference in the final outcome of the game, but First of all, the play where he knocked his own net off, and yes, I know that he was pushed into his own net, but he could have stopped himself. That was one where he should have been called, and the other one where his stick got caught in Corey Perry's skate. So tell me something. How that's not an accident. You have to intentionally put your stick there, and it impeded Perry from potentially going on a breakaway. So that to me is a penalty, and they sort of just brushed it off.
That should have been a penalty, and if Perry would have fell down, they would have called it, which is sad.
That's right. They would have. You're right.
That's sad, because if he would have fallen down, they would have called it. But he tried to keep going, and then this guy's the guy's stick is stuck in his skate. You know, like when you get slashed and the stick breaks, and then you look at the ref and you're like, you see, and then they call it because the proof is there. The guy just broke your stick on your leg or your arm, and here this is the same thing. Well, clearly he tried to trip in. The stick is in his skate.
And I mean, and then you're saying if he falls, well, then he could be called for diving, so he's not going to fall on purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Perry's not like that, unlike a couple of players on Tampa who, I mean, I just told you how great Kucherov is, but he's a little scumbag, you know, honestly.
A lot of them are.
Yeah, he's a little dirtbag in terms of diving. And Sergachev, what a player, but he's dirty as hell too. Although if he's on your team, you love him, but he's freaking dirty.
Yeah, that's the one trade that I'm sure Marc Bergevin regrets.
Oh, 100%.
All the others, I can't really fault him, but that one, you know, because not only did they win the trade, but the player that we got, we haven't seen him in months, and we may never see him again. But that's another story.
So, are you looking forward to Game 4, or?
I'm looking forward to it. I said to a friend of mine who asked me if I wanted to play tennis, I said, I can't play tennis on Monday night because I have to watch the hockey game. I said I have to watch. That was what I said.
I keep trying to tell myself that, you know, look, Josh, we have the proof recorded for all the world to hear. When the Canadians were down 3-1 to Toronto, we recorded the game or podcast after Game 4, and it was basically coach is going to get fired, GM's going to get fired, everybody's going to get traded, this team sucks, we're no good. Like, it was complete doom and gloom, and then everything turned around. So I'm hoping for that miracle, but you know, that's in my heart, but in my head, I mean, I just cannot see it, you know.
This one's a little different because down 3-1 is a little bit easier than down 3-0, and being down to Tampa is not like being down to other teams.
Well, it's the opposite. I mean, you're down to Tampa, who is literally the Stanley Cup champion, the returning Stanley Cup champion, and you were down 3-1 to Toronto, who actually hasn't gotten out of the first round in how many years? You know the number? 17, 20? I don't know how many years. I think it was
2003? Is that possible?
And Toronto just broke the Rangers record this week, right? By the way.
Which record is that?
Longest Stanley Cup drought in history. Like it's over 54 years now.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So, you know what's sad? It looks like Tampa's going to win the Cup this year, and they won the Cup last year. And actually, they probably should have won the Cup 2 years ago when they got eliminated in the first round, because that team broke records during the regular season and then got swept. So, I mean, it's not going to happen, but Tampa could have won the Cup 3 consecutive years. And they'll probably be favored to win the Cup again next year.
Well, they have a salary cap problem, but they, regardless of that, their core is still going to be intact. You know, all the players that we just mentioned, Kucherov, Vasilevsky, Hedman, those guys aren't going anywhere. Sergachev.
Right, but I'm sure they'll find someone else who happens to be injured for the whole season, and you know, they'll figure out a way. But
that's just a testament to their team, right? Because other teams cannot sit out their best player for the entire year and be confident that they're still going to make the playoffs.
That's true,
right?
but I mean,
what happens if What happens if Connor McDavid is on long-term IR for the Oilers for the whole year, so they could save on, so they can? They're not going to make the playoffs.
No, they're not. But Tampa is deep enough that they'll make the playoffs.
That's what I'm saying. Tampa's in a really unique situation. But continue your thoughts.
I didn't even get to the sad part. The sad part is Montreal might not even make the playoffs next year.
Oh, I don't even want to talk about that, but it's.
So it's not like oh, Montreal had a great run, all this optimism for next season, because next season they're going to be in a tougher division and they legitimately might not make the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, look, we're gonna definitely do an episode whenever this series is over. Let's hope it's in a long time, but it might be on Monday. And when we do the sort of end of the playoff wrap up, we can talk about next year. But I'll just leave it at that for now. But yeah, I agree with you.
All right. Well, I'm done for today.
All right. Good stuff. I'll talk to you later and have fun watching Game 4.
You too.
All right.